The inspirational leader risks going all the way to empowerment. So I want to explain about what empowerment really is. It's a word a lot of people use without fully understanding it. So empowerment means no monitoring, but you're still available for support. So if you don't do any monitoring and you don't do any supporting, that's abdicating. But ideally, you don't monitor, but they can come to you. And in fact, the one rule of empowerment is if they have a problem, they must come to you because you won't know because you're not monitoring. So empowerment is different to delegation because delegation involves monitoring. Once you know about empowerment, you realize that delegation is not risky at all because you're monitoring. As long as you monitor the right frequency with delegation, it's not going to go wrong. Empowerment is genuinely risky because you're trusting them to get on with the job without being monitored. So empowerment is really about trust. But I want to give you two examples that demonstrate the power of empowerment. And one of them was my friend John went on holiday to France with his kids a few years ago now. His kids were about sort of 9 or 10 and they were nagging him the whole time. Can we have chocolate? Can we have ice cream? And he felt he was constantly having to be the bad guy saying no the whole time. Next time he went on holiday, he thought, I know, I'm going to empower the kids. So he said to them, here's the £200 spending money and it's yours. And you can spend it on whatever you like, whenever you like. You could spend it all on ice cream on the first day if you want, and you can eat till you're sick. That's up to you. But when the £200 is gone, it's gone. And he gave them the money. Now, what do you think happened? And when I ask people this, sometimes they say, I bet they just bought a load of ice cream and were sick. But no, what they did, they invented budgeting. They thought, right, I've got £200, we're going for 10 days, that's £20 a day. So we'll spend £3 on ice cream, £2 on chocolate. They had it all worked out. They actually came back with money left over. They became real control freaks and they were going, no, John, you can't have another glass of wine because that's more than your budget. And they were absolutely measuring because they had ownership. It was their money. Because the first time they'd been on holiday, it was John's money and the kids were just trying to spend as much as they could of John's money. So isn't that interesting? As soon as he gave them ownership, they became responsible. And that's how people are. So I quite like to ask people, do you just work for this company or do you feel that you're part of the company? In fact, do you feel that you are the company? Because you are. That's all you are. They've got some buildings and some machines, but really the company is the people. And it's interesting how often people say, oh, I just work there. So that means they don't have ownership. So if you're going to be a great leader, people have got to have ownership. They've got to believe that it's theirs. And that's what empowerment does. When you say, I'm not going to check, I trust you. Somebody told me he took a report to his boss and said, is this okay to send? And the boss said, do you think it's okay to send? Because if you do, let's just send it. I'm not going to look at it. If you think it's all right, I'm just going to send it. And the guy said, well, let me just check it one more time. And he went back to his desk and he read it really, really carefully. And he found a whole load of mistakes because he was relying on his boss to check on it because he didn't really have ownership of it. But as soon as his boss said, it's yours, the bloke's quality levels went right up. Now, one more example of empowerment I think is really interesting is that Richard Branson, who I'm a big fan of, he recently said that all the people who work at his head office at Virgin can take as many holiday days as they like. So instead of saying you've got 27 days a year and it's going to be counted and measured and checked on, he said, I trust you. If you want to take fewer days or more days, maybe this year you don't take much holiday because you're busy, take a bit more next year. Or maybe you want to go to Australia this year, but you could perhaps take less days next year. Or maybe you want to go on lots of holidays every year, but work really hard and just do a great job. Maybe work weekends sometimes. So he said, it's up to you. You're grown-up people. I trust you. And I think that's brilliant. And I know people who say, oh, well, that would never work. You know, people are just going to go on holiday all the time. And Branson did say the one thing is you've got to do your job. You've got to properly do your job. And as long as you're doing your job, I'm not going to count your holidays. And some people have said to me, well, that's the catch. Because he's always going to say, you know, you're not doing a good enough job. But I don't think there is a catch. I don't think you need to look for a catch. Because the whole point about this is that if you're a grown-up person and you're treated like a grown-up person, you'll behave in a grown-up way. And if I worked for Richard Branson, I wouldn't take ridiculous amounts of holiday. I probably would take a bit more than I did before. But I would repay that by working really hard because I'd be grateful to him. And I would feel ownership of my job. So I think that would really make a huge difference. And in fact, I've been in jobs before before where I've not taken my full holiday allowance and I thought, right, I've got to use up my holiday days before Christmas because you lose them at the end of the year. And I've gone on holiday and really I shouldn't because I've got to use up my days. But if we had a more freewheeling thing where it's just up to you, I probably would take less holiday days sometimes when I'm busy and I'm enjoying my work. So he empowered people on holiday days and it seems to have worked really well. I'm not saying you should empower people on exactly that one, but I think it would be interesting to think, what can I empower my people on? Can I give something to everyone who works for me that I can empower them on? Is there something where I can say, I'm not going to check on this? Even if it's something really small, like what they say to customers when they go on a sales visit. Just say, go and see them, do whatever you like. I'm not going to check as long as you bring in the orders. So what are you going to empower your people on? Try and think of one thing for each person that you're going to trust them on. So that was delegation. There's quite a lot in there, isn't there? There's delegating versus empowerment. There's the freedom ladder. There's taking a bit of a risk with people. How much should you monitor them? But it's a really important area. And if you don't delegate enough, you're never going to have enough time to do all the other things a manager needs to do. So it's really important to think about those delegation things and put some of it into practice.